Thank you for listening to the Wildcast podcast. I'm Arizona football beat writer Justin Spears, alongside senior writer and columnist Micah Lev, and making an appearance for the first time in a minute, back by popular demand, Brett Fera, sports editor of the Arizona Daily Star. What's up, Brett?
Two of the three people on this show, and I'll let you figure out who the two are, because it's probably not me, have been saying, "When are you coming back on?" No. So,
well, glad to have you back on, Brett.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, man, we're gonna be talking.
It's a very special episode. What do they say on the old after school specials? It's a very special episode on whatever.
It is a special
insert sitcom here.
Yes, for a variety of reasons that we'll get into as we go along here.
Yeah,
but it's Space Game Week. Justin, are you prepared?
No.
For what you're about to experience?
It's Space Game during the day, which isn't a thing. Normally, their space games have been at nighttime, but this is going to be under the sunshine of Florida.
Yeah,
right. It's 3:30. Yeah. So you're gonna get the tail end is going to be dusk, which will be pretty cool. Maybe Elon Musk sends a rocket up over from Cape Canaveral, which is about 30 miles away, and you get to see it fly it overhead during the middle of it. It could be there might be some fun elements to this that we don't know.
That's one of the cool things about the space game at FBC Mortgage Stadium, is that off in the distance you can see NASA doing their projects in Orlando.
Did you see when we did the Big 12 Blitz, and we're going to rerun that content this week? Matt Murschel, who you talked to, I think, for his stuff in the Orlando Sentinel. Who was it? Was it Lev, you and I that talked to Matt? I can't remember.
Yes.
But we, in all that content, we had a thing that I don't know which one of us found it. It could have been me or anyone, but that talked about how the 50-yard line at that stadium was built to be on the perfect parallel to the launch pad, like the core launch pad. That's the famous one at Kennedy Space Center. And so if you're standing on the 50-yard line when something's going off, it's like going straight up over the press box and you're staring at it. And it's like, they did it on purpose. It's by design where it's located. So kind of neat.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. It's all by design. But
Brett, you're a former U of A employee, correct?
Yes.
Doesn't the U of A have a pretty robust space or well, I don't even know what the word is.
Astronomy?
No, space sciences. So the difference is that, and I realize when we're talking about like SpaceX, Elon Musk's businesses and things like that, and obviously with no space shuttles from NASA at the moment, manned space flight is a little bit different these days than it was. U of A's primary connection to space sciences is sort of the deeper space and exploring, planetary things and moons and asteroids. And the big one was the OSIRIS-REx mission a few years ago to the asteroid Bennu, which is out in the far ether. And U of A was the leading, builder of a lot of the pieces. U of A doesn't build the rocket ships. U of A builds the research materials and the things that go into the rocket ships. And so we were talking about this before we came on today, the connection between not just Arizona for that purpose and Central Florida at UCF because of its proximity and connection. And what was it? We've read this, like 40% of engineers, astronauts, et cetera, at Kennedy Space Center are UCF grads. It's some crazy number. And then in a couple of weeks, Houston, obviously a huge one. And Lev, you and I talked about this before the season, that the connection of Houston and UCF, even though it's kind of cool that U of A gets to be a part of it, Houston and UCF probably ought to be the space game every year and just be back and forth wherever they're playing.
That would be a great
connection to that. But so U of A has a very robust space science program, and has for decades. It's a pretty massive thing in Tucson, and Tucson is considered not the but AN is an astronomy capital of the world, and that's why the lighting is lower. That's more that yellow lighting than typical white bright street lights and things like that. And that is because of the astronomical components of being able to look out into space with telescopes from Mount Lemmon and Kitt Peak and all the places within the semi proximity of Tucson. So definitely, I know space sciences and astronomy and all these things are different, but they're all interconnected. It's all things outside of our atmosphere. So
right. Like cool. My point. Yeah. The point I wanted to make was that I feel like
Arizona, after I talked for 7 minutes, sorry.
No, it's good. I love I knew you'd know this stuff. So that's why I asked you. But I feel like Arizona should have leaned into this and tried to claim that it was actually Space U this week. But I feel like also when you're on a 4-game losing streak, that it's kind of hard to
but they wouldn't
in any
shape
or form.
To your point, though,
just for fun.
And this is not to knock anyone. I know there's a lot of flux in that department in the last year and a half, 10 months to year and a half in terms of marketing and everything else. It would have been something they did 6 months ago. They would have planned it as a game and planned and worked with UCF. UCF may not have wanted them to because they want to own the concept, but UCF, are we going to see different uniforms? I was going to ask you guys.
Yeah, no, they have.
Have we seen them yet? Are they out?
They debuted them like a while ago.
Oh, they're the same ones. Okay,
they're different. They're different each year, but they revealed them well before the Space Game week.
So I think it would have been neat if there was, with all the different changes we've seen in helmets and color combinations and stuff. It would have been cool if U of A had something that sort of leaned into it, but that's okay. I still think. I hope the broadcast talks about it from both perspectives too.
You can't plant your flag because Arizona tried doing that with their Cats helmets against Kansas State, and look what happened.
Well, I don't mean, I know Lev just said this. I don't mean try and say, we're the real Space U, but almost own it collaboratively that like all of us are trying to, the universities we're talking about, these three in particular, there's more, I'm sure, but are attempting to, go to the outer reaches of our horizons, in some way or another. And so, I mean, I think it could have been done where it was more just, it wasn't a competition as much as it is just, this is something cool that both are a part of. But at the same time, does that steal thunder from what UCF does? And, Arizona maybe is being respectful and saying, well, this is your thing, go for it.
Yeah. The only ones who can really claim that they've planted a flag in the area of space travel would be Apollo 11. Neil Armstrong literally planted the flag of the United States of America on the moon.
You realize Lev, you and I, we lived Midtown-ish, sort of. I don't know if that's the right answer. Right between the two of us, I won't give his address. Mark Kelly, an astronaut, Gabby Giffords' husband, our Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. He lives right in the middle of Midtown in Tucson. So there's more connections than we even think with U of A.
Heck yeah.
This stuff.
Mirror Lab 2 connected to Arizona Stadium. Isn't there
absolutely. Yeah. The Mirror Lab under the stadium.
Right there. Yeah.
That would have been the thing that U of A should have done. Like, that's the coolest part of the stadium. I have this, it was like $200. I mean, crazy expensive model of Arizona Stadium. That's like probably the size of a dinner plate, but hyper detailed. And it has the Mirror Lab side of it and everything, the Karis Mirror Lab. And that's a massive part of it. They actually closed tours of it for a couple of years. I don't know what the reason was. Again, I don't know if it was for renovations or if it was tied to COVID or something, but it reopened. You can actually book tours of the Mirror Lab, which does the giant telescope mirrors, which are used to study, space sciences better than anyone in the world. So, there's absolutely a laundry list of ongoing connections.
But it doesn't bode well for Arizona because the UCF Knights don't mess around when it comes to the space game. They are 7-0. Average margin of victory is just under 29 points. Oklahoma State went down to Orlando and got absolutely killed last year. I think they put up 70 points on Temple a couple years ago too. So the Knights are really good.
And their mascot looks like an alien. Game. So Nitro. He kind of looks like an alien.
Okay. We had this discussion yesterday before the press conferences.
Well, Citronaut was an alien. The old mascot.
Well, someone said in our group that there was talk at the time when they were renaming the school of calling it University of Florida Orlando, which would have been UFO, which would have been absolutely amazing for a school, nickname or whatever. You could have literally had like an alien as the mascot. So,
they did. No, they did. It wasn't an alien, but he was a Citronaut. He was, so the old mascot. Have you guys seen this guy? He now it's Nitro. So. It's the big, burly, buff knight with the weird.
Yeah.
Who's the dude? Was it Chris Canty who had the mask in the NFL that had 14 lines? Do you know what I'm talking about? Defensive lineman.
Yeah, there's OC.
There's a few of those. That's what Nitro's mask looks like to me. But anyway, in I want to say late 70s, I might be off on the years, but their old mascot was called the Citronaut, and he was essentially an astronaut, but with the body of Otto the Orange from Syracuse. So it's literally an orange body with a green head and a little space helmet on. And I'm like, that is such a good mascot. Why would you change it? It's so great. If you Google UCF Citronaut, it's hilarious. It's not scary in any way. It's not like frightening, but it's pretty funny and pretty great. But UFO would have been amazing. I didn't know that. That's
Oh
what
yeah,
we're
look at
talking
this
about
guy.
doing.
Wow. Wow. That is very cool. I mean, the Knights, that's nice, but it's not the little Citronaut guy.
No.
Oh, he's got the little
Like
helmet
Citronaut, the
on. Yeah.
citrus because of Florida. He's a
Yeah, no, I
Citronaut.
get it.
Like,
Yeah. He's
it's
got an
so
orange
good.
body and a green head. Yeah.
Yeah, they totally whiffed on that. But going to the game on Saturday between Arizona
Oh yeah,
and
that.
UCF.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sure.
You guys brought me
Football.
in.
Uh-huh.
You know I'm going to talk. Sorry.
Now, both teams are struggling right now. UCF has lost 5 straight. They decided to fire their defensive coordinator, Ted Roof, who was the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma last year against Arizona in the Alamo Bowl. In his he didn't even make it a full year. He was hired in January, and they cut him loose after this latest stretch of games. Defense has not looked good for UCF, even though they have a pretty solid defensive line. And I think at some points in this game, they'll give Arizona some fits, but they decided to let go of Ted Roof. They made Addison Williams, who's a defensive coordinator last year. They made him the DC for the rest of the season. And then Gus Malzahn is no longer going to be the play caller. He's going to give that to Tim Harris Jr., I believe that's his name. And I'm curious to see how this is going to go. UCF is shuffling some things on their coaching staff, and we don't even know really what their quarterback situation. They've played 4 different quarterbacks. They started the year with the preseason Big 12 newcomer of the year in KJ Jefferson. They benched him. We've seen Ja'Cory Brown, who I think is going to play on Saturday just because I think he came over from Miami. Tim Harris was at Miami, so there's some familiarity there, and I think maybe he'll go ahead and get the start. But we don't know who the quarterback situation at UCF. They've lost 5 straight. But then again, Arizona, they've lost 4 straight. They found a spark late in that game against West Virginia on offense. Now, was it the offense making progress, or was it Noah Fafita and Titaro McMillan just making some great plays and their relationship really getting Arizona back into this game? Defense really took a step back last game, giving up over 200 yards rushing for the first time since that game against Kansas State. So, I mean, I know we're going to do our predictions later on in the podcast, guys, but I look at this game and I don't even know how it's going to go. I feel like Arizona's either going to win this game or it's going to be another classic beatdown of the Wildcats.
Can I throw 2 quirky things out before I hand it over to Lev? I'll make this short.
Yeah, go for it.
How weird is it that Arizona, a team that we know has been struggling, obviously, has just lost to West Virginia, who fired their defensive coordinator after playing and beating Arizona, and Arizona's now facing a team that's fired its defensive coordinator before playing Arizona. Like, that's weird. That is a strange situation that I don't know if it means anything, but just really odd that on both ends of this week, Arizona's opponents' defensive coordinators were fired. And then the second thing was, and I think this was you guys have talked about this, but it's still wild to me that, and this has less to do with this game, but that Arizona's 4-game losing streak is tied for the 10th longest in the country. And that's only 6 weeks after Arizona had the longest winning streak in the country. So you couple that with what you were talking about with UCF, and something's going to give. I mean, that's obviously the most cliche thing in sports, but something's got to give. One of them has to come out of their funk, right?
Yeah. So we have seen, I think, about maybe half a dozen or so coordinator firings or reassignments or whatnot across the country. At about the same time.
Do you include Arizona in that?
Sure. About the same time last year, about that same number of head coaches had been let go. I think what's happening right now in college football is these schools know that they've got a lot more expenses coming their way in the form of revenue sharing, and they cannot afford to fire their head coaches. So the way to save face or generate some excitement or shake things up is to fire the coordinators instead. So I think, like, as far as a sport-wide trend, that's what's going on here. As far as the quarterback situation, yeah, Ja'Cory Brown is a runner. So I think that would be a good changeup at the very least for UCF to throw at Arizona. That was a big problem that they had early in the season. The guy they might play is Dylan Rizk, Rizk, who's very pun friendly kind of name. He was a 3-star recruit from Cardinal Gibbons in Fort Lauderdale.
The Rizk King.
The Rizk, yes.
The Rizzler.
The Rizzler.
I like
is
that
this
one.
a big Rizk? Is it not a big Rizk? He had offers from Kentucky, Michigan State, and Northwestern, a 3-star. And it's a fascinating situation with UCF and their quarterbacks. And on the flip side, usually when you have this kind of season from hell like Arizona's been having, like one of the things that happens in a season like that is you have quarterback injuries, quarterback issues. Noah Fifita has not missed a snap, besides, I think, being removed from the game because the game was a blowout. Like, knock wood, he's been healthy. That's a good thing. It's just been, it's been a struggle for that U of A offense until the latter part of the West Virginia game, where maybe they unlocked some things, or maybe it was just a case of, West Virginia wasn't going to be as aggressive, or, they were just kind of freelancing and improvising out there. Brett, we haven't had you on in a while. What are your overall thoughts on the way this season has gone for the Wildcats?
I know I'm going to sound crazy saying this, but and it's not the financial reasons you were just saying, but I do think people have to give Brent Brennan a little bit of grace and slack. I think this is more a testament to what we're going to see more regularly in college football moving forward. I think if you look at where Arizona was 9.5 months, I guess 10.5 months ago, and where ASU was, and then you flip the scripts. I think ASU is going to come down to earth a little bit here in the second half of the season, but still, you flip the scripts to a week or two ago. That's not predictable in any way, shape, or form. And yes, people can put that on, okay, Kenny Dillingham has rallied the troops in Tempe, and Brent Brennan and his staff have misplayed their great hand that they were essentially handed off by Jed Fish and company in Tucson. But I don't think it's that simple. I think the movement of players is going to make teams' success more fleeting. And yes, we will probably, but even look at Alabama, we will probably still have names of a handful of teams, 6 to 10 teams that always are in the top 15 and in the discussion for the playoff. But the rest, it's going to be very similar to, I think, what Arizona fans probably would have been happy with if the Wildcats had for the last 24 years since Tomey was fired, is be good, be great, rebuild. Be good, be great, rebuild. This sort of expectation that it's not going to be a bowl game every year. It's not going to be 9 wins every year. It might be 6 or 7 and then 9 or 10 and, making some big noise. And so in that context, in hindsight, which is really easy to say, it doesn't surprise me that Arizona has struggled because stuff has happened. They're starting probable number 1, likely best weapon in the backfield as a running back hasn't played since week 1. That wasn't expected. They were expecting to have him and Quali Conley and Rayshawn Luke and this whole, so that it's not even just about, are they getting the ball to more receivers other than Tetro McMillan? It's not even just about the fact that in 2 games, the most recent and the first game, McMillan has 500 plus yards receiving and 400 and change in the rest. It's not that simple. I think it's more that this stuff is fleeting, and with how much movement there is, they're not building a year-to-year trajectory. Even with a coaching change, that would have been the case a long time ago with less transfers and less other elements to this going on. So I think Brennan needs some slack. I think you then throw in the financial component. You have to give him slack. This idea of people calling for him, I just don't think it's realistic or reasonable. But at the same time, you make a great point, Michael, about that's why we've seen so many changes with play callers and coordinators and position moves, is because someone sort of has to take the fall to appease the masses. And so long story short, to sum up what I'm saying, Arizona is absolutely underachieved, but I do think they're still the team we know them to be. I think we saw that in the second half against West Virginia. It's just to what extent, can they salvage that against teams that they very well could beat and win out? And that's the crazy part. They're not in a position where they shouldn't be competitive these last 4 games. they very well could win out. And would that be considered a success? Probably, because of the flipped expectations of, 9 weeks or 7, 8 weeks compared to what it was 10 months ago. So
that's a moving target, to be sure. To your point, if you look at the national finalists last year, Michigan and Washington, I mean, they are not remotely the same teams that they
Alabama's
were last year.
not remotely the same team. Texas is the only one. And what did Texas do above all else? Kept its head coach. None of the other 3 did. Kept
its quarterback.
Kept both of its quarterbacks, which none of the other 3 did. Granted, I guess Alabama did, but Michigan and Washington did not, for graduation and stuff. But still, so you take those 2 things, and it's a pretty clear understanding that things aren't going to be the exact same.
I would say the thing that Arizona fans would point to is, okay, that's all well and good, but we still have Noah Fafita, and we still have Tetero McMillan, and we still have Jonas Saba Anaya. We still have Takario Davis. That should be enough to be better than they are. So that's the distinction that I would make.
It is true, but you're the one who's told me this. They also lost a guy who all of a sudden is the number 3 receiver on the San Francisco 49ers right now. They've also lost a guy who he's not starting, I don't think, at the moment, but who was a first-round draft pick on the offensive line for the Green Bay Packers. There's enough that they've lost that we aren't necessarily recognizing. If we look back to 2 years ago and how good that receiving room was with Dorian Singer leading the way, and then Jacob Cowing, and then Tetero McMillan as a freshman, compared to now, it's not even debatable. Last year's not even debatable with just the 2 of them. And oh shoot, I'm doing.
And plus, not even mention the defensive linemen too.
Right, defensive linemen, tight ends, and that's not to disparage the current players, but it's very clear that some of these guys that I think Arizona fans that we wondered if would step into key roles, I'm talking more on offense right now, didn't. And maybe that's on Fafita, maybe that's on play calling, but there's only so many times they can go to the well of Tetero McMillan. And it's not going to happen 20 times a game and be successful.
And Arizona's not been the type of program that can just reload like you're talking about earlier, Brett. Like it's sort of secular. Well, every few years. So, and then you add on top of that, they're going into the portal at like January 15th.
So here's the question:
1/10 as many players to choose from.
Let's say Arizona beats New Mexico, beats NAU, loses to Kansas State. I mean, we're talking the exact same trajectory. What was after Kansas State? Utah beats Utah, loses to Texas Tech, right? Let's say we're at that point, but Traden Stukes is healthy, Gunnar Maldonado's healthy. Jacob Manu doesn't, I know it was after that, but Jacob Manu doesn't go out. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is eligible. Again, they could still have lost those games. Kansas State's a good team. Kansas State might make the playoff. Like, let's put all of those first 5 games into the exact same context. Arizona still might be looking at 8 wins. But when you add in what we've talked about with the fact that the injuries are decimating, they're not just banged up. It's decimating what they've had to deal with especially on defense from an injury standpoint.
I would say that.
Well, and I also think too with the injuries, we all thought that Arizona had the talent to be one of the better teams in the Big 12, but we have also questioned their depth, right? Especially on the defensive line, the guys on the offensive line.
Well, again, even everyone healthy, that's a good team. But you 100%. Take two out of 21, 10% or 9.5% of their starting lineup away. If 2 guys get hurt, then 4 guys, then 6 guys. Then you add in Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and his eligibility and all this stuff. Next thing you know, what are we looking at? Maybe 8 of the 21, not counting special teams, 8 of the 21 starters aren't playing. Something in that range, 6 or 7. That's a lot. That is a lot to overcome.
Everything you said is true, but I would say, despite all of that, they still probably should have beaten Texas Tech and West Virginia at home. Those were winnable games, beatable opponents. If they had played better, especially on offense in the first game, and then defense in the second game, defense, you kind of cut them a break a little bit. It's difficult to figure out is it really the injuries in the personnel, or is it the scheme, the structure, things, the parts not all fitting together? And yes,
it's all
yes. The answer is yes. It is all of the above, in some proportion.
Yeah, I think that Arizona right now, the depth or the lack of, I should say, is starting to show with all these injuries. And when Jed Fish was here at Arizona, the transfer portal class, the recruits that they brought in, like there was a lot of defensive backs that they brought in that were really talented that could have stepped up in this year if they were dealing with a bunch of injuries. But a lot of those guys went to Jed at Washington or went elsewhere. So the secondary pieces that are now being thrusted into leadership roles, these are guys that are like what Brent Brennan calls the race to maturity. Like Jack Luttrell, not Luttrell, Luttrell. He was supposed to be kind of like a special teams contributor, a guy who would develop under Gunnar Maldonado and maybe compete for a starting spot next year. All of a sudden, as a redshirt freshman, a guy who has never played any collegiate snaps, he's now being put into, hey, go be your free safety. Rhino Tapatotai, at the start of the season, didn't play any collegiate snaps. Now you got to replace a guy like Jordan Morgan. Like that's a pretty tall at left tackle. Like that's a pretty tall task you're asking for players that should be developing, but now they've been thrusted into these leadership roles.
Yeah, we talked about this. Like we elevated Rhino to such an extent, like sort of viewed him, put him on this pedestal of a super important player, even though he had not played before, because the depth behind him was so scary. We're like, oh, this is one of their most indispensable players, someone who had never played a snap before and was bound to go through a bunch of growing pains as a redshirt freshman starting left tackle, protecting the franchise. So that should tell you right there. The Raymond Polito situation, we've talked about this, kind of had a domino effect. And then there's running backs too. There was a world in which Jonah Coleman was still here. And Jonah Coleman's like a problem solver. If you can't run block, that's okay, because he's just going to break a bunch of tackles and get a bunch of yards anyway. Like he's like very hard to bring down. He's always one of the highest rated and graded running backs on PFF because he makes things happen on his own, and he's playing at Washington.
And like I said, experience matters. Like Jack Luttrell, I was actually kind of just amazed by the amount of snaps compared to the guys that he's replacing. I looked at PFF. They have him at 156 defensive snaps this year. And the guys that he's replacing, like Traden Stukes and Gunnar Maldonado, they've combined for like over 4,000 snaps. Like that's trying to replace those two guys. That's really hard in Arizona starting to see it. But I think Jack has been pretty solid for the most part, has a couple of interceptions this year. But yeah, the depth or lack of, it's certainly starting to show for Arizona. Okay. Before we get to our Arizona UCF predictions, let's start off by doing a Big 12 bonanza, but let's get a standings look from Lev. Lev, where are we at right now? I did awful last week. I'm pretty sure I'm in last place right now.
Yeah, it was not a good week for Justin. You were 2-5 straight up and against the spread. So you have fallen to 32 and 33 against the spread for the season. Brett and I are tied at the top, 35 and 30. Both of us went 4-3 against the spread last week. I was 2-5 straight up and 4-3 against the spread, which is hard to do. Brett 4-3, 4-3. So for the season, we have got a 2-game lead on Justin
on the spread,
the
or
title,
is that
or the spread? Yes.
how about
straight up? Straight up, looks like, yeah, it looks like Brett has a 1-game lead on me. He is 41 and 24. I'm 40 and 25. Justin is 36 and 29.
Do I feel like we were better on the straight up last year as a group? Like, not that matters, but I'm just wondering what that means as we have a larger sample size about just how hard it is to, when these teams get middling at some point, how much harder it gets to predict.
Big 12 is drunk.
It is.
Here, if you guys talk for a little bit, I can try to find this here. So
yeah, the Big 12 is drunk right now. And because last year, with the Pac-12, we really knew what these teams were. Now this year, I mean, I don't really know what to think about the Big 12. Like BYU was voted towards the bottom at the start of the season. And now, I mean, you talk about Kansas State being a playoff team. BYU looks like a team that could somehow get into the playoff.
So, Justin, I've got a question for you. would you say generally, specifically this season and last season, but generally, is the Pac-12, I know there's no Pac-12 this year, but just is the Pac-12 on par with the Big Ten overall? Has it been historically the last few years before its demise?
Ooh, with the Big Ten?
No.
No.
But last year it was great though, because they had all those quarterbacks came back. So that was kind of I would say like a spike.
The reason I ask is that this goes back to the conversation we were just having as we're killing more time. I think you found it.
I've got it. Yeah.
But something I've questioned, I think I've questioned it on the times I have been on this podcast, is I don't know if I understand, other than just it's easy. I made the joke that like Jed Fish is basically making the University of Washington Wildcats, right? I mean, he's taking his full coaching staff. He's taking a chunk of players. He's taking a chunk of recruits. Like, are those players that he would have, and coaches he would have had here with a potential 10-win team for a second year in a row, the caliber of competing at the Big Ten level? Now, this is the same argument we make when we see like a Boise State, who's got one loss, I think, if I'm not mistaken, to the number one team in the country by a field goal. And yet they're ranked 15th in the country because we don't trust their strength of schedule as being anything other than, you know, the Mountain West. But I don't know how to articulate it other than saying I think Brennan, same thing with, you know, a number of guys from San Jose State. These coaches have guys they like. They have situations. They have relationships they've built. Also, you can't all of a sudden wipe everything and go, okay, I'm going to start brand new recruiting both freshmen and transfers when I take a job on January 5th. But I guess it does. To go back to the points we were making about what has led to some of this is even the good players on Arizona, and this is going to sound really mean, and I'm not a football player, so people can say, shut up, you know, where do you have the right to say this? But even the good players on Arizona this year, are they truly great football players on a Big 12 or national stage level? And I don't know the answer to that. I know we know that about Tetro McMillan, and I know we know that about, you know, Noah Fafita to a degree, and I know we know that about Jonas Avanaya and, you know, some of the defensive backs to some degree. But like, I'm wondering to what extent we have in Tucson San Jose State plus, and to what extent Washington has, you know, Arizona plus. And, you know, because part of it also goes back, look at San Jose State and their rebuild with a brand new coach. They're doing fine. But yet these teams that were all part of that Alabama, Washington, Arizona, San Jose State chain of events are struggling. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, except to say, I think there's way more to it than just, is Brent Brennan have a good scheme? And, you know, even looking at, you know, the Dino Baberses of the world, he's only 3 years removed or 4 years removed from a 10-win season, and everybody thinking he's still got it. All of a sudden, he doesn't just lose it. Things evolve in a way that are way more complex. And there's some luck to this stuff too. And I think Jed Fish had some luck last year, and, you know, lucked into a $50 million contract. And that's the game, is you're going to have that happen a little bit.
And that's an interesting point. I'm not trying to diminish the players and where they come from.
Me either.
But if you notice, like under Jed Fish, a lot of the players that they were bringing in out of the portal were coming from other Power 5 programs like UCLA, other Pac-12 schools, where if you look at a big chunk of the guys that they're bringing in, they're coming in New Mexico, San Jose State, UC Davis.
And there's a little bit of the old, you know, diamonds in the rough. Let's get the good ones from the really good ones from those programs. And I give them credit for that. I think that's the right move in a lot of ways. But
that also speaks to the point that when they were able to shop in the
timing
portal, there weren't as many players.
Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So to Brett's, Brett, you're totally on it, Brett, per usual. Last year, through the bowl games, not including the national championship, you had 19 losses straight up total. You're 67-19, 77.9% winning percentage. So you already have more losses than that.
But I'm still tied with you in first place.
You're the best among us.
Straight up,
you're 40. This is straight up 41-24, 63.1%. So you already have 5 more losses this season than last. I think the biggest factor in that is that we just don't know the teams as well as we knew the teams from years and years of covering them.
You know, this is not football related, but this is kind of funny. Bruce Pascoe, our colleague, and PJ Brown and I have talked about this exact thing. They're getting ready, you know, shameless plug. If you're listening to this, the Stars basketball preview edition comes out Sunday in print, and all the content will be spread out over a week. Bruce, PJ, Lev, Greg Hansen, John Wilner, lots of good stuff in it. But I've talked to Bruce and PJ about this and ties to basketball teams joining the Big 12 and how they do not do preseason media polls. I don't know if this was how it was for football. It's a coaches poll for basketball for both sports. I can't remember how football did it, but they don't do preseason media polls. It's the coaches that vote. And the Pac-12 expats, I don't want to say disrespected, but very low respect level on a lot of names on all conference preseason teams, rankings of where they're sitting. The Arizona teams are kind of okay. And anyone can say, oh, well, U of A men being fifth. Yeah, they're fifth, but they're 10th in the country. That's the Big 12. But the rest of the Big 12 is at the bottom of the barrel. I mean, the rest of the Pac-12 teams are at the bottom of the barrel. Maybe they deserve to be there, but it's just interesting that coaches and people around the Big 12 don't know these teams either. So it's the same on both sides. So I'm agreeing with your point on kind of a reverse psychology perspective that you're right. I don't think we know the Big 12 teams. You said at the beginning of today's show, Justin, like I would never put money down on this Arizona UCF game. Not a chance. But last year, if it was Arizona, even at 3-3 against a, middling or struggling Pac-12 team, maybe, when they went up to Washington State, I might have taken Arizona at that point, knowing Washington State was still really good, or we believe they were. But I think it's exactly right. We don't know these teams.
Yeah, we could all be retired right now if we had bet Arizona to win against the spread every game last year and then bet them to lose every game this year. Because that's pretty much how the season has gone. Like, they were favored against Colorado. They were favored against West Virginia. I don't know why they were favored against Colorado. I understand why they were favored against West Virginia, but they have been a bad team against the spread on top of everything else, which is a great segue into the Big 12 bonanza. We have only 5 games this week because we've got, it's a double bye week season, which I think should be the case every year. I think it's helpful for the players, especially, to get that extra rest. We will start with Texas Tech at Iowa State. This game is at 12:30 p.m. Arizona time. It is on ESPN. Iowa State is undefeated and ranked 11th in the country. And Iowa State is giving 13.5 points in this game in Ames. So Texas Tech, they are 0-2 since they faced Arizona. They had a 31-14 lead about midway through the third quarter last week and lost against TCU. Not good. This is kind of a contrast in styles sort of game here. Iowa State, they're first in the Big 12 in scoring defense. They are second in total defense. They're first in passing defense. Meanwhile, you've got Texas Tech, which is near the top in a lot of offensive categories and near the bottom in a lot of defensive categories. So is it a shootout type of game? Is it a low scoring game? I just feel like 13.5 is too much, too rich for my blood. I think Iowa State's going to win, but I'm going to take the 13.5 and take Texas Tech to cover.
I got Iowa State also winning, Texas Tech covering. I think those 13.5 points are too much. And Iowa State, they're looking for their first 8-0 start in program history. It's already the most historic start since, I think, the Great Depression, right? I think the Cyclones keep up their hot streak. I like them to get it done.
I have Iowa State winning and covering, but not because I think I disagree. I think 13.5 is too much, but I think if it's going to be one of those, I don't know if this is technically a backdoor cover or a bad beat type of cover, but I think Iowa State is going to be within 7 to 10 points the whole game and then score within the last 3-4 minutes. So it's going to look bigger than it is. It's going to kind of be like Arizona at BYU, where it's going to be tighter than it was and then look out of hand when it really wasn't. So I have Iowa State winning and covering. I think Iowa State is very, very good, like legitimately could win 2 games in the playoff good. And
very good defense.
Texas Tech is that great.
Yeah, they have a very good defense. They have a really good receiving core. Rocco Becht has kind of, become a guy this year. So things are definitely looking up in Ames. All right. Ranked Kansas State, number 17 in the country, is visiting Houston. This game is also at 12:30 p.m. Arizona time. This game is on Fox. Kansas State is favored by the same number, 13.5, but they are on the road. Houston's actually won 2 of their last 3. They beat Utah last week, despite having only 289 total yards and 61 passing yards in that game. Kansas State, they just barely survived the Sunflower Showdown last week against Kansas, winning 29-27. They got a 51-yard field goal with less than 2 minutes to play. I don't know if you guys saw the end of that game, but when Kansas got the ball back, Kansas State just blitzed the crap out of them. I mean, it was like all out every single play, and that made it really hard. Man, if the Chicago Bears had done that against the Washington Commanders, maybe they wouldn't have been able to complete that Hail Mary at the end of the game. Avery Johnson's on a really good streak since that loss at BYU, a 10-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Since then, Houston is still last in scoring offense, last in total offense. Kansas State, they run the ball really well. Houston also last in third down offense at 27.8%, which is, that's rough. So yeah, I just think Kansas State's better in every which way. Houston struggles to score. If they scored more than 14 points in this game, I'd be surprised. So I am going to lay the points and take the road favored Wildcats.
I got Kansas State winning, but give me Houston to cover, because Kansas State, one thing they're really good at is running the football. We've seen it all year long. Avery Johnson is a dual threat quarterback and a supreme athlete. DJ Giddens, he's got nearly 1,000 yards on the season. But Houston, if I'm not mistaken, they've allowed 100 yards or fewer on the ground in 4 games this season. So I think at home they'll be able to keep the Kansas State rushing attack tamed a little bit. And I think Kansas State, they're a really good team, but I think Houston will keep it close.
I think Kansas State wins and covers. I kind of have the same thoughts about them as I do with Iowa State. I think they're better than people realize. I think if they can somehow win out and not sneak in, but if they win out, they'll be in. But if they can win and get into the playoff, they could actually do some damage. And I just think Houston's not good. I actually think if we're looking at these two games side by side, Texas Tech has this is to your point, Lev, significantly better chance of covering than Houston does, because Texas Tech has a high-powered offense. Even as good as Iowa State's defense is, you can still play good defense and give up points. We see that in fantasy football every week with the teams we probably all have. That's not abnormal. So, but I still think Kansas State's going to win and cover.
Yeah, I really hope that Kansas State and Iowa State keep winning, because they face each other in the annual Farmageddon game for the regular season finale on November 30th. To have that game be super meaningful for the conference, for those schools, would be awesome.
How plausible is it that they could play then and then still play again a week later?
It's very plausible. And then they could conceivably play again
in the playoff.
It's not impossible.
You want to know the Arizona version of this? Arizona men's basketball 2000-2001 season, when they went to the Final Four, the last time they've been to the Final Four, played Illinois, who was a top 5 team, 3 times. Played them in November, played them in December, and then played them in the Elite 8, and then played them again the following December. So 4 times in 13 months, a top 5 team. So I wouldn't mind to see that as a football fan, to see these two teams who really are the cream of the Big 12 right now. It feels like.
Along with BYU.
Along with BYU.
Our game, the Arizona UCF game, is also at 12:30. We will skip that one for now. We will move ahead to ASU at Oklahoma State. This game has been moved from FS1 to Big Fox because the World Series is over. This game is at 4 p.m. And ASU is favored in Stillwater by 3 points. Interestingly, ASU is 4-0 at home, 1-2 on the road. The problem that you have if you're on the ASU side is Oklahoma State is just really not good. They're shockingly, absolutely stunningly winless in conference play. They allowed 565 yards last week against Baylor. They are last in the league in total defense. They are last in the league in rushing defense. So when you're going up against Cam Scatteraboo, that's not really a good thing. But all that being said, I feel like this is a value. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm getting 3 points at home if I take Oklahoma State. They're so due to win a game and have a good performance. I'm just going to take those 3 points. I'm going to take the Cowboys. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope.
Same.
Man, I don't know what's been uglier Oklahoma State season or the uniforms that they're about to wear on Saturday. They're wearing these like black and orange helmets that has OA on it.
Everything is
Oklahoma
fine
A&M.
with the stripes, right? The stripes on the arms and stripes on the legs.
What era
People
are they
just
from?
can't-
Do we know?
From
Are they throwbacks?
They're throwbacks, yeah.
Honor their 125th season.
Are they Jim Click era throwbacks? Jim Click are
I think beyond
Tucsonin,
pre Jim Click.
These
yeah,
are
nose tackle for Oklahoma State back in the day.
No, this is like from like I think like the early 1900s. So way back in the day. But with that being said, I'm with you, Lev. Something's got to happen this week, and I think the Oklahoma State Cowboys will figure it out some way and get Mike Gundy his first Big 12 win this year.
Okay, the last game before our game. This is TCU at Baylor. This game's on ESPN2. It is a 5:00 kickoff in Arizona, and Baylor at home is favored by 3 points. As I mentioned a second ago, they put up 565 yards in their last game. They have won their last 2 games by a total of 34 points. They put up 529 yards against Texas Tech. TCU has also won its last 2 games, but by only 7 points. Their quarterback, Josh Hoover, very productive, but also will give the ball to the opponent a little bit more than you'd like. Sawyer Robertson, the quarterback for Baylor, is red hot right now. He's got 17 touchdown passes this season and only 4 interceptions. I feel like Baylor has found something of late, especially on the offensive side. They're hot right now. This line feels a little light to me, honestly. So I'm going to take Baylor at home to win and cover.
Same. I'm riding the hot hand. Yeah, I just like Baylor the way they're playing right now. And I think this is the Blue Bonnet Battle, right?
Oh, is that what this one's called? Yeah, we need to learn these things, Justin.
The Blue Bonnet Battle will go to the Baylor Bears.
Brett, do you remember the Blue Bonnet Bowl?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Back in the day? Yeah. That was a thing. Before your time, Justin. All right, Arizona and UCF. The space game, it's on FS1. It's at 12:30 p.m. The Knights, the Citronauts, are favored by 6 points in this game, which is about what I would have guessed. I would say it was going to be in that 6 to 7 range. The issue that Arizona has, to me, is they are playing what is essentially a dime defense all the time now. They have moved Dalton Johnson from safety to middle linebacker. He's roughly the same size or so, maybe a little bit bigger, honestly, than Jacob Manu, but it's a light box that they are presenting to opponents. And UCF is the best rushing team in the league. That's pretty much their entire offense. Like, they are a ground and pound kind of outfit. So how does that matchup work? Like, can they hold up against this UCF team that's going to try to run the ball all the time? It's going to be rough. There's a lot of stats I can cite that would lead me to take UCF, but I am just going to totally play a hunch here. Just going on my intuition and instincts, which could be totally wrong. And I think Arizona is just going to somehow come out of there with a win. Straight up. They're actually going to sneak one out. They're going to end the streak of space game domination for UCF, and they're going to head into their bye week with a chance to salvage their season.
There's one way that's going to happen. I'm with you. I think exactly the same thing. And it's no interceptions. No interceptions. Noah Fafita cannot turn the ball over. Arizona wins this game. And that's the answer because of the fact that UCF is going to control the ground game. So they're going to control the clock. They're going to move the ball, but they're not going to score every drive. That's not logical when you run as much as they do. So what Arizona has to do is be able to offensively match those early moments to either gain a lead or stay, gain a big lead. It would be great, but stay within a point or two either way going into the half. And then you start seeing teams, even a UCF, will get desperate a couple of times and throw a ball when maybe they shouldn't or something. And so if Arizona can just keep the ball clean on offense, I think Arizona's going to win.
And I think Arizona, what they should do is go against what they've been doing the entire season. If you win the coin toss, ask for the ball. Ask for the ball. Start the game on offense.
I like it.
Set the tone. And even if you're not getting the ball to start the second half, like you go out there, how many times have we seen Arizona have a great opening drive and they really set the tone? I think if the Wildcats could
Twice.
figure out a way to score early, twice.
It's twice,
Right?
and then both of them have ended badly.
Exactly. So I think
wasn't that right? Isn't that Kansas State and BYU?
Yes.
Is BYU the second one?
Yes.
Yeah.
What they need to do.
Great formula, Justin.
Is
I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm just saying
but that's also the opening drive after they
play
start
with the
on
lead.
defense.
Yep.
So if you go out and you set the tone and you get the lead, and you know what, maybe the defense can figure out a way to stop them early. You get the ball again. Heck, even if you don't score a touchdown, Tyler Loop, you like the way he's able to kick. If Arizona is able to go up 10-0 early or go up by 2 possessions early, and you make UCF try to throw the ball a little bit, hey, that might create some turnovers. That might create some takeaways. And I think for Arizona, I think, yes, don't turn over the football. But I think if you can figure out a way to get out with a lead, I think that's going to really be the recipe for success for Arizona. But, yeah, stopping the run, they didn't do that last game. And UCF is the best running team in the Big 12, and I think they're going to have a running quarterback too. I don't see it, man. I don't see it happening. I think the Wildcats are capable of pulling out a win. Last time they were down in Florida, it's 1992. They didn't pull off the win, but that loss kind of turned around their season. Arizona's not in that same position, but I think whether they win or lose, I still think that they could figure out a way to get to that ASU game 5-6, maybe get to 6-6 and get to a bowl game. Right now, all their focus is just get to a bowl game. And I think they can win this game, but man, it's the space game. It's the space game. They struggle against the run. All signs point towards UCF winning. So I'm going to go with the Knights to win, but it won't be in typical space game fashion. I think Arizona will keep it close and cover.
Wait, you just completely blew my mind with that. You went with UCF to win, but Arizona keeps it close and covers. Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were going to take UCF to win and cover, but that's fine. It's all good. It's all good.
I thought for the first half, not going to lie. No, I thought you were going to take Arizona. No, but are you ready? Are you ready, Justin, for the bounce house effect? Are you ready to grab on to whatever you can? And when that press box starts to shake, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they call it the bounce house. And
there's some videos
when it gets really loud. Like
it was built to flex. So like for hurricane purposes, but also just the modern, it's a relatively new facility. So it's steel and it was built to sort of sway and flex. And you can be in the press box and have a water bottle sitting and it will just move across the table at this sort of kind of like a Camp Randall jump around moment they do at some point. I forget when it is in the game, but yeah, be ready. It's going to come and it's going to freak you out from everything I hear.
We get so much engineering when Brett is on the podcast, you know.
Hey, we were talking about. I'm going to throw some more. We're getting close to high school playoff time. Justin has been doing awesome, getting us some coverage of some high school football players of the week. We were talking about double buys. Tell you what, man, Marana at 9-0 right now plays this week. They have a bye the last week of the regular season. They're going to have 20 days off before they start the playoffs and probably be 10-0. So we might actually see some really cool high school football in Southern Arizona. When you guys said that, I know it has nothing to do with U of A, but it reminded me of that James Kelly and I, our high school writer, were just talking about this. Like they're going to have 20 days off between their last game and the start of the open football tournament. They may make some noise. I mean, they're going to be healthy. They're going to be refreshed. So extra bye weeks, start the week a week early, season a week early, end it a week late, and add in 1 or 2 more for everybody.
I love it.
So this is where we say goodbye. Speaking of buys, to our guy Brett.
Later.
This is his last. This is his last podcast with us because
unless the new boss says I can moonlight every once in a while, we got to get her.
Why don't you explain your situation?
So this is my last week at the Star. It's not like it's been a secret. Some folks know, but my wife Lindsay got a great job offer across the country. So we have picked up our roots of 20 some odd years in Arizona and moved back east where it's pretty and leaves are falling right now. And in about 3 weeks, it's going to be 20 degrees and snowy. So So we're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is where we've settled. And my Pitt Panthers, by the way, are, undefeated and on a collision course. I'm joking, but on a collision course to host Clemson in 2 weeks and probably have College game day here in town. So that might be fun. But no, it's been a weird few weeks. I haven't been in this job as long as I thought I would be, or as long as I would have liked to, but I've known you guys for a long time. Both the people hopefully who are listening, who I've gotten to know, because I was adjacent to sports media in Tucson for a long time, but also the staff that here, like Justin and Lev and PJ and Bruce and Greg Hansen and Elvia Verdugo and our new sports editor, Alexis Wikachia. And I am very excited to hand the reins over to Alexis. She's going to do great. She's been at the Star for almost 20 years in various capacities. And, but it's also, I don't know what to say. I didn't have this really planned out, except to say it's been a blast. This was a dream job of mine, literally 22, 23 years ago. I think Justin and I have had a lot of parallels in terms of coming through school. And I'm not from Tucson like he is, but knowing that coming to work for the Star and being part of this organization, even through its hiccups and its ups and downs, there's something pretty powerful about it and what it means that the Star is able to do, especially on the sports end. And it's been the honor of my career, truly. And I hope to stay connected in some way. Arizona basketball is at West Virginia, about an hour from my house on, I think, January 3rd, something like that. So maybe I can find a way to poke my name in somewhere, but no, it's been an absolute blast. And like I said, not something I planned. I thought it would be a little longer, but even for the last, almost 2 years working alongside both of you and the rest of our group has really been amazing. And I've said it here. I've said it on, lucky enough to go on your radio show, Justin, and, other folks in town have talked to me about it. The best thing the Star has, if people are wondering, through all the evolutions of journalism and media, and this is not a knock on anyone else in Tucson. I think Tucson is a market that has a really great diversity of types of news organizations covering sports, and support them all, please. All of them, not just the Star, but the Star, what it has that sets it apart from others everywhere is the staff. This staff is unreal. And that starts with the two of you. And like I said, Bruce and PJ and Elvia and James Kelly on the high school end, and of course, Greg Hansen. So anyway, thank you guys. And it's been a pleasure. And I hope I'm not a stranger. So
agreed. If I were to sum up the last, what has it been, like 18? How long have you been on the sports editor? Like 18.
So it's convoluted. We can share this behind the curtain. So
Sure.
When Ryan Finley left for his dream job at the San Diego Union Tribune, where he grew up, we were trying to figure things out. And so our previous executive editor had talked to Lev and myself and kind of wanted us to sort of work through things and figure out. And so Lev got to try out the sports editor role and see if he liked it. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think, you were trying to figure out where your next fit was moving off of the football beat. And I was on more of a weird sort of hybrid role. And so we got to work side by side for 4 or 5 months. And then it worked out middle of last summer to sort of transition it and bring me in as the sports editor and let Michael spread his wings in his senior writer columnist role, which has been amazing. So yeah, it's been almost 2 years, and 20 months that we've been able to do this and figure this out. And I think my favorite thing of the last 20 months was the fact that we won the Arizona Media Awards Best Headline competition for Division I. Let's read them off. I'll read off the headlines. So
I was so stoked when I saw this, Justin. I was like, Brett, you got to find out what the headlines were. What headlines did we submit?
It's the three of us, actually. I think the three of us in some capacity collectively were part of this entry. We entered 5 things in no order of better or worse. One of them was the cover of the Pac-12 basketball special section. And it was Caleb Love, and the headline was "Love This Time of Year," talking about March. Then there was another basketball one. This was when they were going to Los Angeles, and we kind of had fun with it. And this is where I think journalism, especially in print, is going to be missed when it evolves more and isn't as popular, because we did cool things with design and things like headlines, where the headline was LAX factors. And so it was a picture of the background was LAX airport, and it was tied to Arizona's struggles in Southern California, but also sort of that idea of who the X factors would be. Lev had the next two, which are both really great. One of them was Glove Story, and it was about
Ali
Skaggs winning the Gold Glove, which now U of A has another one. So I say we like I'm part of it. We got to figure out how to cover that one. Dakota Kennedy won it this past year. But about Ali Skaggs winning the college Gold Glove, which, by the way, is the coolest trophy in all of college sports. I don't care. You can have national championship trophies, crystal footballs. The Gold Glove is the sweetest trophy I've ever seen. The other one was a feature you did on Emilio Corona for that same special section, previewing baseball and softball for U of A. It was RISP Reward, RISP, RISP, runners in scoring position, talking about Emilio Corona's ability to, I mean, so good. That was all Michael Lev. And then the last one was sort of a weird, for only being 2 words, in fact, we needed 2 of us to come up with this, but it was Justin's big takeout that we've run twice. We did rerun it. It was that good on Noah Fafita prior to the Alamo Bowl, Noah's Ark. But Ark spelled A-R-C because of his growth and evolution. So that was our winning entry. So I'm really proud of that. Short words, 4 of them are only 2 words a piece. That says something, that you don't always need 100 words as I'm talking for an hour. So
you challenged yourself in that way.
It was great.
I would describe our time working together as stressful but fun, which is maybe the way that I would describe the industry that we're in.
But I don't think
overall.
we cause the stress on each other.
No, not at all. No,
all of us. I think it's
the
just
job
the
itself
industry
is stressful. Yeah.
But I feel like if we didn't have each other to bounce off of in those stressful moments, but also kick each other in the rear when we need to, the stress would eat us up. So being able to, like I said, pulling the curtain back, the number of in a good way, the number of hours I've spent on the phone with Bruce Pascoe, where he's kind of machinating through story ideas and stuff. He needs that. And that's what benefits our readers. And doesn't mean I give him great ideas. I just sit there and, I like that. And it's a lot of it is usually with Bruce. It's not run this and not that. It's okay. This one will run Saturday and that one will run Monday, but it's an hour figuring out which one's which when it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The audience is still going to get it. But so I agree with you. The stress levels is a big part of it, but I think having us all together is why we've been able to manage it and stay sane.
Brett, you're a pro's pro. Thank you once again for your services to the Arizona Daily Star. It was a pleasure to work for you.
Thanks, man.
Man, and for you to be the guy after Ryan Finley, I'm like, man, I've been super lucky. I've been super blessed to have some great bosses at the Arizona Daily Star, and we're gonna have another good one in Alexis Wikachea.
Yeah. So this is not something that Justin and I have engineered because you keep kicking our ass in the picks, by the way, and we're gonna have to figure out if you can keep doing that as a editor emeritus. But yeah, Brett won. Brett always does better than we do, and I think it's because
it's the Ryan Finley approach.
He doesn't
overthink it. It's the Ryan Finley approach. It's, I like their helmet this week. I mean, we think about it as a joke. There's a sexist trope that if you play with your spouse, the sexism that comes into my wife, Lindsay, plays fantasy football in the same leagues I'm in and kicks my tail constantly. But she actually knows what she's doing and spends way more time on it to the point we're at dinner and I'm just like, can we please not talk about fantasy football for one night? It's every day. But no, the sexist trope is basically that, women will pick, based on colors or mascots. But Ryan told me this once. He goes, don't overthink it. Go with your gut and pick something off the wall. So Justin picking UCF in the space game, that's the off the wall moment. That is their moment. And so Justin's probably going to win that one because it has nothing to do with the two teams sometimes. It just has to do with everything's a lot closer than we think on those fields. So that's what I do each week. I if you notice, Lev will send the picks out and I'm sending him my responses in about 47 seconds sometimes. Partially because I know I would just spin in circles if I had more time than that.
I've just got this whole giant page of research here that I do on every game. And then I still get it wrong. So yeah, I think you're doing it the right way.
Couple quick announcements though, if I can.
Yeah, of course.
The Wildcaster app has been in redevelopment for a long time. This kind of got sidetracked a little bit by my telling our team that I was leaving, telling our bosses I was leaving. But expect, if you're a Wildcast app fan, expect updates on that in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be very exciting. Really, really cool updates to the app. Some changes. We hope you'll stick with it. But I'm not going to be the person to share all those here, but just want to tell people to be ready for it. It's going to be really cool. These podcasts will be available there. Working with other partners in the community, like the Tucson Roadrunners, who produce a couple of podcasts a week. Their podcasts are going to live in the Wildcast app. We're working on, I say we, I got one more day, but we're working on various ways to make it more holistic for you as the readers and listeners and watchers of what the Star does. So the Wildcast is your home, as well as obviously Tucson.com/Wildcats and the Arizona Daily Star in print. So a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, the what?
Wildcaster. I'm sorry. You don't even know what products we're talking about now. No, the Wildcaster app with the Wildcast podcast, obviously.
Yeah, you've got about 2.5 days to go, Brett, as we're recording this. And remember, it's fall back. Saturday night, Sunday morning.
I have to change my clocks for the first time in 25 years.
So you get an extra hour to work for the Daily Star, thanks to fall back.
Thank you. So. Thank you.
I wondered if I'm up. Thankfully, it's a 12:30 afternoon Arizona start, because if I was up at 2 a.m. waiting for Justin to get out of his story that he works on till 5 a.m. sometimes, if I was sitting there waiting, what happens? What happens when the clock changes? Do you have to get up and turn around and spit? Do you just what do you do? If you're actually awake when this happens, what's the rule? So that you don't, put bad juju on yourself for the next year. Do you actually go and hand change the clocks at that exact, what is it, 1 a.m.? Is that what they say to do?
It's 2 a.m. Yeah.
2 a.m. But I probably will not be up at 2 a.m. Thank you to the 12:30 space game, which you guys already talked about, with one team called the Knights, but playing during the day. There's a lot of stupidity with it.
Brett, we appreciate you.
Thanks,
Best of luck to you in Pittsburgh, man.
Love you both.
All right, Arizona versus UCF, 12:30 p.m. Tucson time, 3:30 if you're in Brett's neck of the woods over there on the East Coast. Should be a fun one out there in Orlando. And we'll have all the coverage on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster mobile app. Like Brett said, lots of updates coming your way soon. Make sure you download that Wildcaster app today.